Good morning, students. So, as you all know that during these times, your classrooms, teaching and schools are all suspended due to certain circumstances which are well known to you. The government and other authorities of the school have come up with this idea of online learning, and according to the instructions and need and to according to your recommendations also, I'm making this video, which I hope will be useful to all of you. And this video is regarding the first chapter of class 12th Flamingo textbook, which is ironically named as the last lesson. So let's begin with it, and I hope you find the content of this video important and meaningful. Well, if you have read the text, as I had already sent you the link of the NCRT textbook on the group, if you have read it, you would know that this is a story of a post war society, right? But before we actually begin discussing this text, I want you to go back in memory some other texts that we have already read in our syllabus. For example, the story by Marga Mingo, which is named as The Address. In this particular chapter, you have seen that the story is about a society which is, of course, war affected, and you find a young girl who is in search of her mother's thing, which were once owned by them. And in the due course of the story, we get to know that probably during the war, or as a result of the war, she is the only survivor of her from her community. All other members of her community, including her mother, have been dead, right? So now, of course, it has had a very traumatic effect on her mind. Therefore, in order to recreate her own past, in order to recreate her memories with her mother, she tries to get back all those things which were once owned by him and which were given to Mrs. Torling, right? She goes over there, she tries to find those things, and she finds those things as a medium to move back to her past. You must understand those things which were once owned by her mother becomes a medium for the protagonist to move back in the past, and therefore those things actually become a medium to move back through the memories in the time when she was with her mother, so that she feel still connected with her mother, especially in her presence, especially in her absence, which is going to be everlasting now. Once again, there was yet another poem that we had read on the same grounds, which was, if you remember, in the class 11th, there was this poem called um, A Photograph. There also, there is this girl who is looking at a cardboard, at a photograph of her mother and of her cousin sisters, which was shot during a sea holiday, and she looks at the photograph, and then that photograph also acts as a medium of moving back through memories into a time when the mother was alive, so that the daughter feels closer to her own mother. Now, you must understand, by reading these two texts, you realize that memories play an extremely important part for any person to revisit their presence and to revisit their past, right? Now, past in that way gives an important meaning to the existence of a person. It becomes very important for a person or for a community to find out an identifiable entities only through the past, right? Please keep these ideas in mind now while we keep start moving towards the chapter that we are discussing, the last lesson. In the last lesson, you find that this is a story which is about the two districts of French, Alsace and Lorraine, which have been overtaken by German powers after a war. Okay, so the first thing after coming to the power, the German powers or the German authoritarians does is that they impose their own language, German, on these two districts of French. Now, the French will no more be their language. Their new language, their new official language is going to be German. This is the background of the story. Right in the beginning of the story, you find that there is a little boy, Franz, who is approximately 13 to 14 old. He is a school going boy, and he is moving towards the school rushingly in a very hurried way because he is late towards his school, late in reaching out to his school. That's firstly. Secondly, he has also not read his French grammar lessons properly, from which probably he is going to be tested today. So he has all these apprehensions and doubts in his mind as he's moving towards his school, and while on the way, he notices few things. So there are few things that he notices. There are German soldiers, where there's drilling practices of the German soldiers going on, and also there is a notice board around which there is a lot of crowd. So I'll discuss about these symbols later on in a different video. Right now, let us stay connected with the concerns of the story, and let us look at the main points of the story, the thematic concerns of the story. So what happens is that as he is moving towards the school, he finds, as I told you, a notice board which has been overcrowded, and then he moves towards the school. Within the boundaries of the school, he finds the school unusually quieter and calmer. He moves inside the class with a feeling that he would be chided by his teacher, Mr. Hamel. But as opposed to his own expectations, he finds Mr. Hamel was quite quiet and he was very humble also towards Franz. And as he moves towards the class is already in progress, and he finds a couple of others. They're not students, they are villagers, and there are other people from the village of from the Franz village, and they were also occupying the last bench of the classroom, and the class was had already begun. And there is one important thing that happens is that he finds his teacher, Mr. Hamel, in his new suit. This was the dress that he generally reserved for a special occasion, and today he was wearing it. And he was unusually calmer, he was unusually kinder towards his student Franz. He goes and he occupies his seats and sits down quietly just to learn the lessons which Hamel was telling. And then he realizes that Hamel tells him that this is going to be the last lesson of his. Now, this came as a shock to him because he realizes that it was Hamel's last class, because Hamel will no more be the part of the school as he's a French teacher, and next day onwards the French will no more be the language of their country or of their districts, and German will be taught to them. That is the moment when Franz feels awestruck. He feels very bad, and at the same time there is this repentance which emerges in him, right? Now this repentance is only going to improve as the story progresses, because the teacher talks to them about first the importance of their language. Okay, the importance of a language for a community. Second, he also talks about how responsible each and every native of a community is to preserve their own identity. And third, it is not just the duties of the soldiers who are fighting on the war fronts or on the borders to save the dignity of their countries, but it is equally important for a teacher, for a student, for all the natives, the commoners of a particular society or a community, to safeguard their own identities, right? So then he looks at the condition where German is going to be imposed upon them is not just a process of political domination, but it is also and largely probably the ignorance of the teacher, of the education system, of the students, of the commoners, of the parents of the students studying in that school, of ignoring their language and inevitably their culture for a very, very long period of time. They have never taken care of their language. They have never cared to go to the school. They have never cared to learn their own culture and traditions and past and history. And that is why they are today stuck in a situation where a foreign power is ready to dominate them. Now, what are the implications of it? Do you think Hamel is only repenting because he is losing his job? No, certainly not. This has far reaching implications, and the implications are going to be this. Now, imagine if a community does not have its own language. Okay, well, it is difficult for us to imagine any community which does not have its language, because we don't have communities without languages, right? We are all human beings and we have languages. But just imagine that on one fine day you were told that you're not You're not allowed to speak your own language, and you do not have any right to exercise your own languages, to read, to learn, and to write. See, what will happen is that slowly and steadily a new language will come into their lives. They would start reading, writing, and learning a new language. But slowly and steadily, what will happen is that whatever the traditional and the cultural nuances which were associated with their original language, which were associated with their native language, will also keep getting erased with the passage of time. Language is not just a collection of words. This you must understand. Language is totally and completely associated with a set of traditions, with a set of cultural practices, with a set of norms, with set of belief system, which together gathered together, which if are presented together, if they're taken as a bouquet, they are known as a culture, right? So in a certain language, for example, you might have your own literature in your language, and language has its own nuances, as I told you. Once the language is removed, that whole lot of literature you can imagine is also going to be removed from that particular society's past. Now the literature will have the creativity of a particular set of people, of a community. The literature is going to have recorded the set belief systems of the people of a community, which will get erased with passage of time. And at the same time, I want you to also understand that with the eraser of all these things, there will be a time, there will be a point in time in history where a particular community whose original language has been taken away from them will forget who they have been. They would have to either begin their making a new community based on based on a new language. They will have to start making a different sort of an identity. So it is the question of not just taking away of one language and getting replaced with a different one. It is also a question of construction of an identity, and then forgetting an identity and trying to reconstruct a new identity, which brings me to the issue of existentialism. Now, existentialism is basically the query of the situations which allows us to exist in this universe meaningfully, right? So if this particular topic is getting too difficult for you to understand, let me just get back to the basics. All I have been trying to say is that language, along with the culture, history, past, are extremely important for any community to frame its identity, right? Now, Hamill, being a very informed and alert teacher, he realizes what the implications of this change of a language is going to be. Now, he starts finding out responsibilities within himself first. He calls himself not always a very somebody who has not been always responsible. There have been times when he has allowed he has sent his students to water his flowers, and he has not taken those classes. So he backs up the responsibility of not being a very good teacher first, and then he has also made other students realize that how they have also been quite ignorant towards their own studies. Then he also talks to the parents or to the villagers who are sitting at the back of the classroom, that how they have also been quite ignorant about the progress, academic progress of their own children, how they have often sent their children to their fields instead of sending them to school, how education is not just linked to earning money, but education becomes an important source and a weapon to know yourself, right? Now, since they have not taken care of all those things, today they are standing in a condition where a foreign power is ready to dominate them. So, you must understand that language then for a community is extremely important. And therefore, what happens is that the story is about the importance of a language for a particular society. Therefore, When you read this chapter again, kindly keep this point in mind when you talk about the importance of language and you think about how language is inevitably linked with the framing of identity for a community. Kindly keep this in mind when you read the chapter again. And in my next video, I'll talk to you about the various important quotations which are there in a chapter along with the another symbols that are used in the chapters, and with that I will upload a new video on the above said the above aforementioned topics so that we can get in detail. Please watch the video properly. If you have any doubt, ask me your questions. I'll be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much. Have a very happy and a learning day ahead. Thank you.